Oh, I bet you do.
What? No, I think Alex is doing that. Yeah, he's gonna go get cross country. I'm here, so.
Well, let's get started. Good evening, my name is Gary Rainey, and I'll talk to you more in just a minute, but thank you for being here. Very important vote for public safety in Payette County, as well as for your tax dollars. So thank you for coming out and listening and engaging and figuring out what the right answer is. So let's start with introductions. I'm gonna ask self-introductions, if we just go down the line from Commissioner Bishop, sorry.
I'm Ken Bishop. I represent District 3, which is Fruitland and South County there. I've been a county commissioner for a couple of years. I've also served in Fruitland, so I know I've been around this process a couple of times before. I'm currently serving as the chairman of the board. So.
Hi, I'm Anne Marie Kelso. I represent District 1, which is mainly Payette. I grew up around here. I actually graduated from Fruitland, but now I live just a little bit north of Payette. So thank you all for coming.
And my name is Jennifer Reeby. I serve District 2, and I cover a lot of ground all the way from Sand Hollow, all the way north around New Plymouth, and even some areas of Fruitland. So happy to be here.
I'm Sheriff Andy Creech. I'm on my second term here as sheriff. I've worked in our county for the last 29 years as a law enforcement officer.
I'm Lindsay Bratcher. I'm the county clerk. I've been in Payette County my entire life and worked for the county for 22-ish years.
My name is Annie Knudsen. I am a Payette County resident.
You'll hear more from her. So as I said, my name is Gary Rainey. I was honored to be the Ada County Sheriff from 2005 to 2015. Ended a 31-year career there, which I loved very much. After retiring, I thought I would dabble a little bit in consulting, and that has taken me all over the United States. I really specialize in jails and in making jails safer and what we call constitutional compliance. There are certain things that the Constitution requires. For example, you don't have a constitutional right to medical care until you go to jail. Once you go to jail, you have a constitutional right for medical care and many other things that happen. So I've been honored I've worked with jails that were built for 17 beds, and I am currently hired by the City of New York to help some reforms on Rikers Island. And we're not Rikers Island, and let's give a little round of applause for that, because we're here in Idaho. I get to see a lot. And I get to see a lot when it comes to the problems in jails and how to avoid them and what to do about them. I've been involved in these processes of should we build a new jail, how big should it be, when should it be built, all of those. The key questions I think for you as a community is, who do you want in jail? How many beds should your jail hold? Because do we build for just a starter home, just enough that we have today, and maybe we're gonna add 1 or 2 more? Or do we build the whole family? Because unfortunately, criminal justice in the United States has proven over and over again that jail populations will grow. Luckily, there's some things that are happening that are limiting that growth, but they're still going to grow. How much do you want to invest in that? Do you want to avoid the liability? It's not a fine line of when you're going to occur the sort of liability and the costs from liability that will occur. When I retired in 2015, the counties had never had over $1 million settlement. Now I think there's 5 of them, and we've taught $3 million in litigation settlement. And I'm talking about public safety litigation settlements. And the second highest is from a jail. was from a jail death over in eastern Idaho. That really they didn't do much wrong because they were trying to get by with what they had. But nonetheless, it's a tragic incident, a death occurred over there, and they got sued, and the county had to pay out. So those are the things you have to weigh as well. It's the unknown, right? You don't know that you're gonna be sued, you don't know what's gonna happen, you don't know that there's gonna be any bad outcomes in the jail. In my world, it's only a matter of time. But it's up to you as a community to make that decision. Again, if you weren't here, the questions, we want to respect people's time. And often when it's an open mic forum, there's a lot of redundant questions. So we ask you tonight to submit any questions you have on these index cards. There's some right in the back of the room. He'll hand you a pen. I'm getting these coming in. And as moderator, I have some questions that were already sent in. I'm going to ask those, and I'm going to try to choose and be as respectful of your time as possible. If we can group any of these together that are being asked. If we have time at the end, we don't want to block off the conversation. We just want to be respectful of time. So we'll see how it goes and what time we have. We're going to try to shoot for about an hour, and then I think some of you have signed up for a jail tour. And Sheriff Creech is going to take you on that jail tour and let you see what's up there for your own eyes. So with that, let's get started. So Sheriff Creech, why do we need a new jail?
Yeah, so we've been operating our jail. It was built back in '72 for the original part of that jail and expanded in '99. And at that time it was expanded to 69 beds. And for the last several years, since about like 2017 or 16, we've been overpopulated, and that just continues to occur where we have more inmates than we have room to be putting them in. And so part of that is that for us to classify people correctly and for us to separate people to keep them safe within the jail facility, we have to have room to move them around. But when we're overpopulated, it really becomes difficult to classify and house people correctly and safely. The overpopulation has caused the county to fail its last 3 jail inspections. And we've been working with our court system, our judges and prosecutors, and we've instituted some other type of programs to try to help alleviate concerns on the jail, which we've had like probation and inmate work detail for a number of years, but we've added things like pretrial release and just to giving the judges different options that they could use instead of putting people in the jail. So we're trying to work with the judicial system to find ways to deal with the number of people that are being arrested and brought to our facility. The other thing is that there's really 3 things. So the second thing is that infrastructure in the jail is starting to fail. And so we've had plumbing in our kitchen area where it's collapsed. The pipes have collapsed under the ground. We've had to cut out the cement. We've had to take and replace those pipes and re-pour it. And plumbing issues are a major issue in our jail facility. And so we're having more facility issues in the jail itself. And the third issue is in the 1972 part of the jail, it was never designed to meet today's standards. The standards back 50 years ago are different than they are today. And really, the cost of bringing that up to date is extremely substantial. It would be cheaper just to build a jail than to try to renovate that 50-year-old jail to bring it up.
Thank you. And we're going to circle back around to some more depth on these. Ms. Knudsen, you served on the Citizens Committee. Would you tell us all about that?
Yeah, do you want me to come up here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the Citizens Committee, the Master Facility Plan Citizens Committee, I was asked to partake in this venture in May of last year. And I was asked because of my community involvement. So a little more expanding I could have done on who I am and what I do. I am a business owner and operator in the community, and I serve currently on the, or as a board member, for the Chamber of Commerce in Fruitland, and then I'm also a school board trustee for Fruitland School District. So the idea was to choose community members that would kind of reach different parts of the community, and there are some other people that were on the Master Facility Citizens master facility plan, I don't know, the citizens committee. They're in the audience as well. So once we were chosen and we agreed to do that, we met 5 different times. They started by giving us a tour of all the facility. So we got to see building department, to clerk's office, to the jail, everywhere. And then we reviewed documents. They sent out surveys to the community. They sent out surveys to the staff. We reviewed all of those surveys in the hopes of prioritizing what needed to be done first. It was overwhelming to us as a committee to prioritize the jail. Lots of different reasons. After that decision was made, we started looking at what was the best way to proceed with that, as far as building a new jail off-site, or expanding this one, or potentially a new jail on-site. We ultimately decided to recommend to the commission to use existing land that the county owns off-site and start that plan. Lots of different reasons for that. One is because everybody needs more room, so moving it off-site to a place that's not here is good because it has room to expand into the future there. We're here, if we built, there would be enough to expand now, but not potentially in the future. Also not necessarily being next to a primary school was a concern of ours. Yeah, lots of different reasons. So once that was decided, we made that recommendation to the committee and then, or to the commissioners, excuse me, and now we're here, still involved in the process.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bishop, why can't we just save up and pay for this? Why do we need a bond?
That's a great question. So most local governments in Idaho's budgets are pretty much based on operational needs, what it takes to run things day to day. There isn't any allowance for saving for capital projects, and in Idaho, we're limited to, our budget can only expand by 3%. Our property taxes, we can only grow that 3% a year. And as everybody knows, inflation, especially the last few years, has far exceeded that. So we fight in our budget the last several years to just keep up with cost of living issues, cost of operations. We do not have capacity to save any substantial amount for this. It would take us, I don't know, perhaps decades or more, far beyond when we would need, absolutely, unquestionably, perhaps by a judge's decision to build or expand the facility. There's just no way the budget could ever accommodate a project of this size. So that's, local budgets, cities and counties, especially small counties, really have a challenge with infrastructure projects and trying to replace or expand them. So.
All right, thank you. We're going to come back and talk about some of the financials in more depth, but good question here, Sheriff Creech. So what all does this include? Jail, sheriff's office, new courthouse? What's the plan?
So the plan with the bond initiative that we have is to build a new sheriff's office and jail facility as one complex. And really what we're looking at with using some projections that we've gotten from some different architects is that what they project the need of the jail will be in like 20 years is 192 beds. And then our judges here in our county, one of the programs that we used to be able to offer and they use as a sentencing tool was work release. And it's a good intermediate tool when you want to have something more strict than just probation, but something less than full jail sentences. They would use work release, and they'd like to reinstitute that. And so the 192 beds plus adding work release and then adding some cells on for medical and stuff like that, because we're having more people that we're housing in our jail, especially with mental illness, and we lack really a safe place for these people. And even after the court is ordered for them to be transferred to a state hospital, we lack state hospital beds for these people to be in. We hold these people for a period of time where we're waiting for a bed to come open. And so we need to have a place where we can house them safely so that them and my staff aren't getting injured during altercations in there. And so really, we're talking about a full sheriff's office, we're talking about a 230-bed jail is really what that $40 million bond's gonna bring.
While you're at the microphone, there's just a couple people in this room interested about where it's going to be.
Yeah, and that's been a big topic of interest. And so the Citizens Committee recommended that we use this property off of Payette Heights between Center and 7th Avenue North. And part of that was a landfill, and that was a landfill prior to me moving here. And we can't build on the actual landfill because you have to wait 100 years before you can build on the landfill. There's other property there that was never a landfill. We're talking about that area that's closer up to the hill, more towards the north, closer to 7th Avenue North. The decision to use that property hasn't been fully made. The recommendation was based on the fact that the county owns the property and it's hard to find and purchase property, and then buying the property would increase the cost of the overall project. But in considering that property, there's other considerations, and if the bond was to pass, the next stage of this would be actually like figuring out where it goes. And some of the things that I know have been brought up by citizens, just as I went around the community and talked to people, and the questions that have already been asked, when you look at like 7th Avenue North would be probably a main route for patrol cars and ambulances, fire trucks to get up to the facility and back. And while the city's been expanding their portions of 7th Avenue North, the county has not expanded theirs yet. And so there's some traffic concerns there. My understanding from talking with the city is that the sewer ends, maybe it's Pilot's Landing, that subdivision in that area, and we would have to install some lift stations to bring the sewer up to that area, plus water, power. And so really when we get ready to find the actual location where it ends up at, there's gonna be a lot of things that go into that decision. It may end up being that the cost to use the property we already own is too much for us to use that, and we'd be better off to buy a piece of property somewhere else. Commissioners might decide to swap that land for somebody with different property. They might decide to sell that land and buy other property. And so right now the recommendation is use the property we own, but I think that it's hard to say specifically it's gonna go in this specific spot because there's too many unknowns yet.
So I think some of our citizens in the back of the room question, why should I vote for this if I don't know if it's gonna be in my backyard?
Yeah, I understand that. We have been working to expand and build a new facility for our paramedics, and it took us 2 years to find a piece of property that we could purchase to build that on. And so, it's hard to tell. And like, if we use the property we already own, then we can start that project right off. But I think we also know if we use that project, there's gonna be some additional costs that go into that. We don't know what those costs are yet. And so those costs may add up to being more significant than looking at something different. And it's hard to answer that, but that question, or the location of the jail, it's not something that our county commissioners have made a decision on and said this is where it's going. And so as of today, that decision hasn't been made.
I'll keep you on the hot seat while you're up there. So if this doesn't pass, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and we've been for years maintaining that jail, and we've been continuing to operate the jail. If this doesn't pass, we're gonna keep maintaining the jail, we're gonna keep running the jail. We'll keep doing what we can to manage our inmate population numbers. We'll keep working with the state prison system to try to move out state prisoners out of our jail as soon as we can, so we can not have it filled up with their prisoners. They lack space as well for their own prisoners. We'll keep doing what we can to keep our jail operational, functional. We'll try to keep it to where we can reduce our liability. And we'll keep engaging with the public to find out, like, what do we do from here? And because the reality is that I'm just here to run this office and run this facility for you guys. And so really, it's what the citizens want and what they will support. And so if the bond doesn't pass, we'll keep doing what we've been doing, and we'll keep engaging with the public to try to find out, like, where do we go from here?
All right, I'll give you a breather. I'm not sure who's best to answer this, so I'll throw it out. So there's a lot of questions about property taxes and values. What if my valuation goes down? Does this bond go down? Commissioners?
So the estimate right now is a $40 million bond stretched out over 30 years. And so the estimate is it would cost about $59 per $100,000 of property value. If you're a homeowner, you would be subtracting off your homeowner's exemption, $125,000. So that's the estimate right now. If property values go down, I would ask Clearwater for a little help on this. I'm assuming that the amount you pay on your property taxes per 100,000 would go down as well.
Yeah, the levy rate is based off of the total property value of the county. So if your individual house price, house value goes down, then, but the county property value stays the same, then yeah, your payment would be a bit less. If everyone's value is going down, then that levy rate, the percentage has to increase a little bit, so you're probably gonna end up paying about the same amount as you were before, because they have to meet that bond payment every year.
I think that was my question, if I can clarify.
Yeah.
I was talking about if your residence is in proximity to the new jail, wherever that is.
Well, that's this question, it's next.
Would that decrease? Oh, well, all right. Okay.
It's a different question.
Yeah, so let's go to this one. So, what would we anticipate, I'm not sure where to look, what would we anticipate for the property values of those people who may be living next to the new jail? Correct?
Correct. There's no way to guesstimate that, I understand, but I think why would you pay more money on your taxes to get less value in your home by proximity to the new jail?
Sure.
I think that's a fair question. I would say I have a long history of planning and zoning, and that's a question that everybody asks for every application that's maybe cited next to them. It's gonna hurt my property value. And actually what we found is that generally that's not the case. Now I can't speak for a jail because we don't have any jails in our area, but I can say that wherever we place it, the proximity to houses is a major consideration. So wherever we put it, even if it's on this land that we own, we will site that as far from houses and residences as we possibly can, and if we have to look for another site, that's certainly a consideration.
I just would like to ask Andy to talk about the type of architecture that is being contemplated, the architects that we've talked to so far.
Yeah, so a year ago when we started the master facility planning, we had an architect firm that was used to help advise the county come up with some estimated costs on the facility, and the estimated cost they came up was based on the jails that we typically built in Idaho. And so the things that you would think of when you think of a jail facility, you probably think of like our rec yard out here with the concertina wire and stuff like that, like a prison system and things like that. And so it was all brick and mortar buildings, and their recommendation was for this to be a 125 bed jail, partial sheriff's office for $56 to $74 million. And since then I've done some more research on different facilities, and really the facility I think that would work best in our community is this steel cell jail facility. And while there's still a lot of brick and mortar in it, the cells themselves are steel and they're prefab in a factory, which helps cut down on labor. And so looking at a 230 bed jail with a full sheriff's office at 40 million, as opposed to the 125 bed jail that we would outgrow, I would estimate before we paid it off, which to me is not a good use of money. I'm a taxpayer too. And so in the new facility, what we're looking at is a steel building. And so when you think of like our onion sheds here, we're talking about an onion shed. And on the front, they'll have some brick and stuff to make it look like a building, but on the back, it's a steel building. And on the inside, is all of the brick and mortar and steel cells that make it secure. There wouldn't be an outside rec yard, which is one of the areas that causes the most problems. The last escape out of our jail facility was back about 11 years ago, and they escaped over the concertina wire in the rec yard. And in the new facility, they would never leave the brick and mortar walls. They would not have that opportunity. I don't know who looks at that wire and says, I think I can do that. But we had a guy do it.
I had it.
And this keeps them inside that facility. When you look at the outside, there'll be the brick on fascia on the front. And when you look at the sides, it'll be just a steel building like our onion sheds. And so really the building itself is gonna look less like what I think of when I think of a jail. And what I think most citizens, when you think of a jail, you're thinking of what this looks like out back here now. And it's not gonna look like that.
So in response to that question, go just a little bit further. One of the questions is about this perimeter fence and what's it gonna do to protect, wherever that jail's built, what's it gonna do to protect nearby families?
Yeah, and like the fence details haven't been really discovered. I can tell you that the jail that I went through in Indiana and went through theirs, because the inmates don't leave that facility, that they didn't have a significant fence. It was just a normal fence. I can also tell you all the escapes that we have, they're not trying to find a place to hunker down. They're on the run and they're leaving. The guy that escaped out of the rec yard, like we didn't catch him till he got to Cancun. He was not stopping. They're not finding a place to hunker down and wait because they know that we have everybody out looking for them in that moment. And so the fence is something that, we haven't got down to that kind of detail. My hopes is that, from the public standpoint, that it doesn't have this appearance that puts it off. Because I think that if I lived in the neighborhood where this eventually ends up at, it'd be off-putting to have what I think of as our prison system with tall fences and concertina wire everywhere, and that when I go outside my door, this is what I get to look at. And I think that we can build the jail safe without having a prison look to it.
One more and then I might give you a break. So there's sort of two ends of the spectrum. One is a concern from some people saying, wait a minute, you've got beds you can rent out. Why don't we use those beds rather than you renting them out? Another question is, what can we do to rent out beds and offset some of these costs for us?
Sure. So today, let me look at my number real quick here. So today, like last year, the state paid us about $345,000 to house their inmates. I'm not asking for those inmates. I do not have room, nor do I want the state's inmates today. We don't have room for them. What happens is they're a county inmate and they're residing in our jail facility up to the day that they're sentenced. And on the day they're sentenced, they become a state inmate. And from that day forward, I start charging them. And so we're always working with the state to try to remove their inmate from the day they're sentenced out of my facility and move it to one of their facilities. So it's not like today I'm intentionally renting space to the state of Idaho. The state of Idaho is not able to remove their inmates, and so they stay in my custody until they have room for them and they remove them. So I'm not renting beds out to the state right now. They're using beds because they can't move their inmates and they pay us for that. But in the future, you build the jail for the size of jail where when you're going to be when you anticipate that you'll be maximum capacity, that's what you're building it for. And between today and that time, there will be beds that won't be being used. And there are other entities, like when you look at the marshals that don't own a jail, they pay counties quite a sum of money to house their inmates. And we could intentionally have them rent beds from us and pay us. There's other counties, both Adams County and Washington County has expressed interest that if we had room, they would send inmates down to us for us to house them. Ada County and Canyon County are in the same place that we are, where they're overpopulated, and they take their inmates to other counties to house them. And so if we was to expand the jail, there'd be extra rooms for a number of years, extra beds for a number of years, and we could rent those beds out and get paid that. The commissioners have some different options they can do with that. So they can use that to offset the cost of operations of the facility, which could impact like taxes. Instead of increasing taxes up, it can offset the cost of that. They could use that to pay off the bond early. And so when we had the last bond, we paid that bond off a few years early than what was projected. And so the commissioners could take that money that we bring in as revenue, and they can allocate how it goes. And maybe it goes to paying the bond off earlier, and it offsets operations. But that's something that the commissioners can use that money, and they can use it to do that. The other piece too is the facility that I'm looking at and that I would be interested in doing. Even though I'm running a 69 bed jail and they're running a 220 bed jail, they're doing it with only 5 more staff members because it's so much more efficient to run. And so even though we're increasing the jail by a large size, if designed correctly, it'll be more efficient to run and not take double or triple the staff I currently have.
So I was gonna let you up, that's one of the questions is how many more new hires do you anticipate? So you're gonna have personnel costs on top of the bond. What do you expect those to be?
So right now, like 5 new positions is what I would anticipate compared to the county that I've looked at in Indiana and the style of jail facility that I think would serve us well. They're using 25 staff members and I have 20 positions in my jail. So 5 more positions. When you're talking about such a large increase in capacity size, it's really a small number of more staff. And part of that's because the jail is just built to where it's more efficient to run.
All right, I'll let you have a break because our county clerk I know really wants to talk.
It's her favorite thing.
So it's a great question. So did Payette County receive ARPA funds, and if so, what were those spent on?
Yes, we did.
You should probably
receive
explain ARPA funds.
ARPA
just to make
funds.
sure.
Those were some federal dollars that the American Rescue Plan, American Plan Act, yes. ARPA funds, we received those. It was approximately $4.3 million. This was not the board that we had when we received that funding, but we had a failing HVAC system, and we had been working, band-aiding it for a number of years. And when we got that money, they chose to put some of the ARPA funds towards fixing that. Now, the bids that came in on that were very high. They chose to only do half of what was recommended to replace everything, and we chose the smallest, the least amount that was, I don't know how to say it, but it was
Basically, we
basically
replaced the
selected the
critical,
smallest.
The most critical issue.
yeah, the most critical pieces to make the system work.
Yes, and that was $1.3 million. And the rest of the money was dedicated to the ambulance district. Again, this,
What? I missed that.
the ambulance district.
Oh, thank you.
The ambulance district has been living in trailers on Fruitland City's property. They have far outgrown the trailers, and the board also acts as the ambulance district board. It was actually the late Commissioner Shigeta that suggested that we use our ARPA funds for the ambulance district. And he felt like that met the criteria that came with the money. And then, of course, the criteria that came with the money changed throughout the years, but $4.3 million would not go very far towards building a jail. This current board did discuss that, maybe have a lot of turnover for a couple years. And they did discuss giving the money towards the jail project, but it wouldn't have done much for the jail project. $4.3 million, which it's now $3 million for the ambulance district, and they're trimming back as much as they can out of what they need to get that project
So similar question. What was the foregone, I don't know if foregone was used, but this question is, what was the foregone used for in the past years?
Yes, the last 2 years, we have taken foregone for, just repair or regular maintenance and operations, not for capital project.
Yeah, typically not a lot of money.
Yeah, you can't, this year's was 83,000, I believe. And if you wanna take it for a capital project, there's a different percentage that you can take, and but the amount of foregone that we have is around 800,000. So, also, we could use that towards the project too, but you can't take the whole 800 in 1 year.
Thank you. I'm gonna wrap some of these into a question. There's a lot of questions around what's gonna happen with this building. Could the existing jail site be sold to offset costs? What could it be used for? Who could talk about those ideas for a while?
So the Citizens Committee, part of their planning that they did in that master facility planning was looking at all the facilities here on our complex. And so just like the issues that we have in our jail facility, in the court facility and the courthouse, this part we're in here, this hasn't been changed or expanded since 1972. And so really, we've started having people working like in vaults. And one of the last things we did is we took the janitor closet, we made it a lobby for the public defenders. We were just out of space here. And so we're using, like, we continually move people and change uses of space to try to continue to make it to where we can provide the services that we have. And so really what the Citizens Committee recommendation was a 3-phased approach where we build the jail and sheriff's office, and then second phase was that we remodel and expand the courthouse so that it can meet today's needs for the court facilities. And then the third phase was down the road, the jail will need to be expanded. So it was 3 phases. What I see in that immediate time is if the new jail is built, where the old jail is I can see where people will be using that for storage, or some of the office space that the sheriff's office uses now. We'll expand out people and start putting them in those office spaces and start relieving some of the strains that are here. But the second phase would be to demolish the current jail and to build a new court annex in that spot. And so down the road, the second phase, the plan is to remove the jail facility itself and do an addition there.
You're good.
Okay.
For the moment. Again, trying to wrap some questions together. There's still a lot of concern over not knowing the location. And not just, is it not in my backyard, but what about city services? Will the city annex it and provide services? What about water, sewer, trash? Will it have bus lines? All of those things that are under consideration, and heightened by, having been through this, I think I kind of understand where you're at. Why hasn't the site been selected by the time you come in front of people?
A lot of it is because of the way we have to approach things like this, projects like this. Obviously our budget's tight, we don't have the ability to fund engineers and architects to study the issue enough to get an exact size, exact capacity, look at a specific location and do all the engineering to figure out how much it would cost to extend city services or what the other ramifications are. All that has to be paid for within the bond funding. And that means we have to ask for the bond before we can even start on some of the really hardcore details of what the project scope is going to be. Any city, any county faces these issues, especially smaller ones. We just don't have the capacity in our budget to pay for that out of pocket before we get to the actual project paid for by the bond. So,
I don't know your process, but based on my experience, you don't have the money to secure a piece of land, and once you name a piece of land, before you have the money, the price goes up.
exactly, that's just human nature and the way
Yeah.
it works. So, yeah, you typically have to approach it, you know, from the way we've done it and the way other projects have been approached. If you don't already own the land, it's not something you can build your project proposal around.
So here's a key question. Will there be a site selection process that the public can participate in if that time comes?
Well, certainly, any site selection would go through the same planning and zoning procedures that any project that happens in the county or the cities do. And that always involves the public hearings, that people can, you know, attend and participate in and give their input into. So it would go through the same process that any project would go through, you know, unless there's what I would say is a miracle, and there's a parcel of land that is of adequate size, already zoned, you know, ready to go. It would have to go through that same process. So, yeah, public would have a lot of opportunity to participate in that.
So on that note, I think it would help maybe between the two of you. So give us a timeline. So, okay, the bond passes, here's what's gonna happen and here's about when we think it will happen.
We might need a little input from Clearwater in terms of that exact timeline, unless Andy, do you have more of that?
I mean, I don't have an exact timeline, because I haven't been involved in a project of this size or this kind in my career, but, when you think about the studies that will have to be done in the site selection and looking at, you know, for that site and what will have to be done in order for that to be a viable site. And when you look at selecting when you're selecting like your architecture and coming up with your design, when you're selecting your general contractor and doing that, like, in my mind, if we broke ground within a year, we'd be doing well. And once we break ground, I could anticipate that maybe another year. So in a really rough manner, I think that when you would see the jail finished, open and ready for an open house, like we might be a year and a half, 2 years down the road. Because that first year is gonna be a lot of planning, it's gonna be a lot of studies, it's gonna be a lot of answering these questions that are being asked today and that have been asked over the last couple of years that we've been talking about it. And that's gonna take some time to work through that. And I would like to say that the county's trying to be open and transparent. I've been out talking to a lot of different groups throughout the county and through our county fair and different community groups that already exist in our county. And my intention, of course, is that this facility is something I want the citizens to support. And so my intention is that during these processes, there'll be opportunities for you guys to continue to engage and talk with us and to express what you like, what you dislike, so we can use those in our decision making. Like the surveys we've done last year and this year, we've used your responses to help guide the decisions that we're making. And we appreciate everybody's involvement in those things.
So one more for you while you're up there, Sheriff. If this doesn't pass, what's your FY26 budget for the existing jail look like?
I don't have that number, do you? We didn't do any major increases on the budget this next year. The revenue constraints that we have, that mainly all we did was provide raises to our staff, but we didn't include any major purchases. Matter of fact, one of the things that the county has done in my budget to help us stay within the revenue that's available is we've always throughout my career purchased 2 to 3 patrol cars every year. Those patrol cars are getting more expensive to purchase and to outfit, and you might notice if you've gone to buy a car, it's hard to buy one, and it's hard for me to buy one as well. And so we've moved away from buying them to leasing them, which has reduced the cost. And so we've been looking at ways that we can reduce our expenses because the revenue isn't keeping up with the expense of the office. And so in this next year's budget, the increase was only for raises. With like yeah, we had a year before to help with the revenue, we had cut the medical expense, and then we had a run on our medical expenses this year, and so we've increased some lines in there by some amounts to cover what we're anticipating, but there's no new major increase in the budget.
I've got a comment on that, if I could. One of the reasons we're doing this now is because we see what's coming. You know, we failed some inspections, and that's a lot like getting a speeding ticket. The first one really doesn't affect your cost of insurance, but if you get more than one, eventually it's gonna increase our liability insurance that we pay. So it's gonna increase costs there. Medical is, you know, those kinds of things. God forbid we have an incident and there's a lawsuit, that's gonna impact and increase costs. We feel it's necessary to propose this now, to put this out for, you know, your decision, is that we see costs coming that will have an impact on the budget, and we'll have to start moving funds from other departments to pay for these extra costs that the jail will generate. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, we feel it's necessary to do it now, even though we don't have any of those really frightening expenses yet.
It's only a matter of when.
And as far as his budget, I don't have his exact budget in front of me. I have the Justice Fund, which also houses the prosecutor's budget. And the total budget is 7.6 million, what we levy is 4.1. We did also hire a facilities manager, and he is able to save us some money in repairs, general repairs that we were having to hire out on. So we're hoping that will help in some aspects.
I'm winding down, so if we have not answered any of your questions, you still have time to get them in quickly. We've got about 8 minutes. As long as you're speaking, Madam Clerk. Can we use Clay Peak landfill money as a part of funding the jail? I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so Clay Peak is our landfill. The revenue from the landfill actually goes into an enterprise fund. They do buy down our levies some because they pay a host and an admin fee for any out-of-county, other counties contract with the landfill and will dump there. And they pay the county a host fee and an admin fee. And so we do have some landfill money currently that acts as revenue for the county that buys down your levies. There are some changes up at the landfill, not to get on a landfill kick, but the commissioners are also looking at making some changes to the landfill that could change that, so.
Thank you.
So I guess it's kind of.
Commissioner Kelso, I know you've been too quiet. So, most such projects go over budget. Are there contingency dollars in this, and what happens to property taxes if and when the project becomes more costly?
I would say no, we don't have contingency dollars. So we are very, very careful when we plan our projects. This is all fairly new to us, and we're working with Clearwater to keep those costs down. But we've had a little experience on a much smaller scale doing the ambulance, and that's where we're at right now, is scaling that down. Everyone wants a grand start, and they're not even asking for a lot, but you know, they want X amount of bays and X amount of office space, but we have X amount of dollars. And so we work really hard to scale those down. We are very, very aware of property taxes and what that means to people and money coming directly, out of your pockets. And so we work really hard to make sure that we stay within budget. And we will have to scale down the project before we try and find more dollars.
All right, so thank you. In the 6 minutes we have left, Ms. Knudsen, I'm going to ask you to take 2 minutes, sort of sum up the voice of the citizens committee. What should these people know about the process for the Citizens Committee that they may not know. And then I'll ask Commissioner Bishop for 2 minutes on your personal take on this, and then our sheriff to close.
So I think I kind of already went over the process and what we were asked to do. I did feel like in this process, they did ask a lot of us as far as, there were a lot of documents. We had a lot of questions. They answered those questions. We had concerns. They took those concerns seriously. One of the concerns that we had was maintenance of the facility, the current facility, and if we're gonna spend the money on a new facility, how are we gonna take care of it and maintain it and make sure that it is lasting for us? I feel like they took that seriously and they hired a facilities manager to work with now and going forward. So the process was in depth. It was about a 6-month process with about 5 different meetings, some of them on site, some of them Zoom. But that process also included us going out and talking to the public, the people that we knew and interacted with, and we brought a lot of those questions back to them, and that went into making that recommendation to the commissioners. And I do feel heard. I feel like it was a good committee for us to be part of, and it was a good way to reach some of the public at least.
Thank you.
So we took this issue very seriously. We kind of alluded to it in some of the things that have been said, but we started this process a couple of years ago. We took it from the standpoint of what do we need to do the best for the county, and we engaged the Citizens Committee, and we're deeply grateful for their time and energy and input. And we took that, kind of methodical process of what were the needs, what's the best way to solve it, and then that's how we've arrived at this proposal. We very much from a common sense standpoint of bare bones, the same thing that we did with the HVAC system here, with now the ambulance district building. This is similar kind of vein. It's really based around what we feel the needs are to do the best job we can, both from an operational standpoint, from running the system to financially, doing the best we can on both sides of that, so that as we move forward, we use those dollars to the best possible effect that we can. So, thank you.
I just want to start by thanking you guys for coming. We've been trying to engage with people, and we've been trying to get out in all the places we can. One of the comments we've had online is that when those groups normally meet is at lunchtime during the day, and not everybody, it works in our county, is available to do it, and they wanted a chance to come at night. And I appreciate that you guys came and that you're here to be involved, so thank you. I want to add to some of that conversation, some of that background maybe we haven't talked about, but in the master facility planning piece of this, part of what was explored was what was the cost to build on to the current jail facility and just add on to it. And then also, what was the cost to build a new facility on this complex, and then what would be the cost if we built it offsite? And part of the difference in what the recommendation was and where the county is wanting to move is that when you remodel, there's actually additional costs to the remodel process than just building new, and so it doesn't actually pencil out to be cheaper. Plus, in the part of the jail that's over 50 years old, it just does not meet standards the way it is, and so it'd have to be completely redone. And the hard part is like when you're trying to still function the jail and keep it secure while you're doing addition onto the facility, it'd be extremely difficult, and there's not jails in our area where we could just move our inmates to them and have them house them while we did this process. And so that really went into a lot of the consideration that committee put forward. Really, our staff, myself and my staff, we're doing everything we can to keep our community safe. That is what we're charged to do, and that's what our intention is to do. And this is an issue that we've been trying to deal with in numerous different ways, working with the prosecutor and the judges, and just doing everything we can to do our part to manage what we're asked to manage. And if we were able to pass this bond and build a new facility, it would help us in so many other ways, and it would help us provide a safer and more secure facility. It would help us provide a facility where my